Have you ever had the strange feeling that something wasn't quite right? That the people around you, the situations you were in, even the choices you thought were yours, might not have been what they appeared to be? Maybe you've noticed it at work. How the person who gets promoted isn't the most skilled, but the one who knows how to look important. Maybe you've seen it in relationships, how someone's charm hides their true intentions. Or maybe you've seen it in politics and society, where entire nations are guided not by truth but by appearances, stories, and illusions. It's almost as if life is a grand stage. Everyone is wearing masks, reading lines, playing roles, and yet most of us mistake the play for reality. But what if you could step backstage? What if you could see not just the performance, but the machinery behind it, the motives, the strategies, the fears and desires that actually drive human behavior? That's the beginning of what I call philosophical clarity. It's not about becoming manipulative. It's not about being cold or ruthless. It's about learning to see through the fog, to pierce through appearances, and to recognize the deeper currents of reality. Because once you see clearly, you cannot be deceived. Once you understand the rules of the hidden game, you stop being a pawn and start becoming a player. The Italian thinker Niccolò Machiavelli is often remembered as the father of manipulation, the writer who taught rulers how to be ruthless. But this is a shallow interpretation. What Machiavelli truly offered was a kind of X-ray vision into human nature. He showed us that beneath the surface of morality and appearances, people act out of necessity, fear, and ambition. In other words, he wasn't teaching cruelty. He was teaching clarity. And clarity, once you develop it, is more valuable than money, influence, or even raw power. Because power without clarity eventually collapses. But clarity, real vision, creates power. Now, this raises a deep question. If seeing clearly is so powerful, why do so few people do it? The answer is uncomfortable. Because clarity often reveals truths we don't want to face. It shows us that people aren't always who they claim to be, that loyalty is fragile, that appearances can matter more than substance, and that fortune, luck, chance, timing plays a bigger role in our lives than we like to admit. To embrace clarity means to let go of illusions, and most people would rather live comfortably in a dream than wake up to a difficult truth. But you're here because something in you wants more. You don't want to drift through life blindfolded. You want to understand the world, to navigate it, to master yourself and your surroundings. So in this journey, we're going to explore the philosophy of clarity. Not just Machiavelli's insights, but the timeless wisdom of thinkers across history, combined with real-life examples from the modern world you and I live in. We'll talk about why people wear masks and how to see beyond them, why self-interest drives so much of human behavior and how recognizing this changes everything, why appearances often outweigh truth, and how you can use this knowledge without being deceived, how fortune and preparation dance together in shaping your life, and finally, how clarity becomes meaningless unless you take decisive action. This isn't a lecture about theory. It's a practical guide to seeing the world as it really is, and by the end you'll have a choice. You can go back to the comfortable fog of illusions, or you can embrace the sometimes unsettling but always liberating gift of clarity. So let's begin this journey into the masks, the illusions, the hidden rules of power and perception. Because once you learn to see, you can never unsee. Human beings are storytellers by nature. We tell stories about who we are, about what the world is, about what other people mean to us. These stories guide us, comfort us, and often deceive us. The philosopher Plato illustrated this with one of the most famous metaphors in history, the allegory of the cave. He described people chained inside a dark cave, facing a wall. Behind them, a fire burns. Between the fire and the prisoners, figures move, casting shadows on the wall. And the prisoners, who cannot turn around, mistake these shadows for reality itself. To them, the shadows are the world. The truth, what lies outside the cave, is unimaginable. Now here's the question. Are we really so different from Plato's prisoners? Think about it. Social media feeds us carefully crafted images of people's lives. We see the vacation photos, the smiles, the polished achievements, but not the loneliness, insecurity, or private struggles. Politicians speak in lofty tones of justice, freedom, or morality, but behind the curtain, decisions are often driven by self-interest, alliances, and survival. Even in personal relationships, people present the version of themselves they want you to see, masking weaknesses, exaggerating strengths. And just like the shadows on the cave wall, we often mistake these illusions for reality. Why do we fall for it? Because illusions are comfortable. It feels good to believe that your friend is always loyal, that your partner is flawless, that your leader is noble, that your life is more secure than it really is. Truth, on the other hand, can be painful. To see clearly requires us to face the fragility of trust, the selfishness in human motives, the randomness of fate. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Men are disturbed not by things but by the views which they take of things." In other words, it's not reality itself that troubles us, but our interpretation of it. And so, to protect ourselves from discomfort, we filter reality, we soften it, we distort it, we cover it in illusion. But here's the paradox. While illusions may comfort us in the short term, they weaken us in the long term. Because if you can't see things as they are, you can't prepare, you can't adapt, you can't truly thrive. Modern psychology confirms this ancient wisdom. Social psychologist Irving Goffman described life as a kind of theater, where each of us performs roles depending on the situation. At work, you wear the mask of professionalism. With friends, the mask of humor or confidence. With family, maybe the mask of responsibility or obedience. These masks aren't necessarily lies, they're adaptations. But if you mistake the mask for the real person, you misunderstand the play entirely. The truth is, even you wear masks. You present versions of yourself depending on what you want others to think. Sometimes it's harmless, other times it's strategic. Clarity begins when you stop taking masks at face value, not in others, and not even in yourself. Let's bring this to our time. Imagine scrolling through Instagram or TikTok. You see influencers living in luxury, smiling endlessly, traveling the world. The illusion is that their lives are perfect, effortless, and filled with joy. But step behind the curtain and you'll often find debt, loneliness, burnout, or the endless pressure to maintain appearances. Yet millions of people still compare themselves to these shadows on the wall, feeling inadequate because their reality doesn't match the illusion. Or consider politics. Leaders know that perception matters more than truth. They carefully craft speeches, images, photo opportunities, because they know most people won't look past the illusion. The shadow is enough to shape votes, to build loyalty, to sway entire populations. And in business, companies sell not just products but images, happiness, status, belonging. A soft drink isn't just sugar and water. It's marketed as joy. A luxury car isn't just metal and wheels. It's sold as power, prestige, identity. These are illusions we willingly buy into because they satisfy our hunger for meaning. Here's the hard truth. Illusions persist not because others impose them on us, but because we want them. We want to believe in love stories without flaws. We want to believe our leaders are noble. We want to believe success comes easily, that life has fairness built into it. In other words, we are complicit in our own deception. Clarity, therefore, is not just about unmasking others. It's about unmasking ourselves. Asking, what illusions do I willingly accept because they comfort me? Imagine for a moment that you step out of Plato's cave. At first, the light blinds you. It hurts. You want to run back to the shadows, to the familiar illusions. That's exactly what clarity feels like. When you first begin to see through masks, to recognize self-interest, to understand the machinery of appearances, it can feel isolating, even harsh. But over time, your eyes adjust, and you begin to see more deeply, more sharply, more truthfully than before. And with that vision comes freedom. Because if you can see the illusion, it no longer controls you. If you can recognize the mask, you're not deceived by it. If you can accept reality, even its discomfort, you can navigate life with strength instead of weakness. So the first step on the path of philosophical clarity is this: recognize the power of illusion. Understand that the world you see is layered with masks, with shadows, with comforting stories. But don't stop there. The real question is, if people wear masks, what lies beneath them? To answer that, we must move to the second layer of clarity: understanding the law of self-interest. Because behind every mask lies a motive, and once you learn to see those motives, you'll never look at people the same way again. If illusions are the stage and masks are the costumes, then what drives the performance? What is the hidden force behind the roles people play, the strategies they use, the decisions they make? Machiavelli, along with many other philosophers across history, gave us a simple but uncomfortable answer: self-interest. We want to believe that people act out of pure love or loyalty or morality. We tell ourselves that kindness is selfless, that generosity is unconditional, that loyalty is absolute. But clarity forces us to ask, is that really true? Look closely at almost any action and you will find a thread of self-interest woven into it. A person who donates to charity may also be seeking recognition, tax benefits, or the comforting image of themselves as good. A friend who offers advice may partly want to help you, but also may want to feel wise, respected, or needed. A leader who champions justice may believe in it, but also knows it boosts their reputation, strengthens their power, and secures their legacy. This doesn't mean people are evil. It means people are human. Self-interest isn't a flaw. It's a feature of human nature. Machiavelli warned rulers never to rely on loyalty, gratitude, or love alone. Why? Because these emotions are unstable. When circumstances change, so do people's feelings. What endures, he argued, is self-interest. This might sound cynical, but it's actually liberating. Because once you accept that people act to serve their interests, you stop being surprised when loyalty fades, when promises are broken, when morality bends under pressure. Clarity doesn't mean assuming the worst in everyone. It means assuming the real in everyone. One of the biggest mistakes we make is projecting our own values onto others. If you're honest, you assume others are honest. If you're loyal, you expect loyalty in return. But people are not mirrors. They don't operate by your code. They operate by their own interests. This is why betrayals feel so devastating. Not because the other person changed, but because our illusions about them collapsed. Clarity spares you from this trap. Instead of asking, "What would I do if I were them?" you ask, "What do they want? What do they fear? What outcome serves their interests?" When you think this way, people's actions become far more predictable. It's important to understand that self-interest comes in two forms. Narrow self-interest, the immediate pursuit of personal gain, even at others' expense. Example: a coworker takes credit for your idea to get ahead. Enlightened self-interest, the recognition that long-term benefit often comes from cooperation, fairness, or generosity. Example: a business invests in treating employees well, knowing it creates loyalty and productivity. Both are forms of self-interest. One is short-sighted, the other far-sighted. But in both cases, the motivation is still rooted in what benefits the individual or the group they identify with. History is full of examples where misunderstanding self-interest led to downfall. Julius Caesar trusted the Senate's loyalty, only to discover that their self-interest in preserving power outweighed their gratitude toward him. His assassination was not about morality. It was about survival. In business, Kodak once dominated photography, but they clung to film technology because their self-interest was in protecting profits, even as digital cameras emerged. Their blindness to the true self-interest adaptation led to collapse. On the other hand, consider Nelson Mandela. His decision to promote reconciliation in post-apartheid South Africa wasn't just moral, it was also strategic. He knew vengeance would plunge the country into chaos. By aligning morality with enlightened self-interest, he preserved peace and secured his legacy. Self-interest isn't just for kings and CEOs. It's in your daily life. A friend who always calls you only when they need something. A boss who praises you in public, but only to make themselves look like a great leader. Even in romance, people often fall in love not with who the other person truly is, but with how that person makes them feel. Once you start looking, you'll see self-interest everywhere. Now here's the good news. Once you understand self-interest, the world becomes more predictable. You no longer rely on vague hopes that people will do the right thing. You analyze what serves their goals, what protects their image, what relieves their fears, and suddenly their choices make sense. This is clarity. It doesn't make you cynical, it makes you strategic. This doesn't mean you should never trust anyone, but it does mean redefining what trust really is. Don't trust people to sacrifice their interests for you. Do trust people to act according to their interests, consistently. If you align your goals with theirs, cooperation becomes natural. If you expect loyalty without alignment, disappointment is inevitable. For example, you can trust a business partner if their profit depends on your success. You can trust an ally if their survival depends on your alliance. That trust is rooted not in emotion, but in structure. This idea isn't unique to Machiavelli. The Chinese philosopher Han Feizi, one of the founders of legalism, argued that rulers should never rely on virtue alone, but on systems that channel self-interest. The Indian strategist Chanakya, in the Arthashastra, described alliances as temporary arrangements driven by shifting interests. Even Adam Smith, the father of modern economics, built his theory of markets on the idea that individuals, by pursuing their own self-interest, unintentionally benefit society as a whole. Across cultures, across centuries, one truth echoes. People act to serve themselves. So what do you do with this knowledge? First, stop being shocked by human behavior. When someone acts selfishly, don't ask, how could they? Ask, how does this serve them? Second, align interests wherever possible. If you want loyalty, make it in someone's interest to be loyal. If you want honesty, make it more costly for someone to lie. Third, examine your own self-interest. What masks do you wear? What illusions do you protect because they serve your needs? Clarity begins with yourself. If self-interest is the force behind the mask, then appearances are the mask itself. Because people don't just act, they perform. They don't just pursue their interests, they shape how those interests look to others. If self-interest drives the play, then appearances are the stagecraft, the lighting, the costumes, the illusions that make the story believable. Machiavelli and countless thinkers after him warned us, reality is ruled not by truth, but by perception. Imagine two leaders. One is honest, competent but awkward and uninspiring. The other is corrupt, shallow, but charismatic and persuasive. Which one is more likely to gain followers? History shows us again and again that it is the second. Why? Because people don't see truth directly. They see appearances. They don't peer into your soul. They judge the signals you project. We want to believe truth wins in the long run, but in practice, truth without appearances is invisible. From the moment you wake up, you're stepping onto a stage. You dress not just for comfort, but to project an image. You adjust your tone depending on who you're speaking with. You post online, curating which parts of your life others can see. This is not deception, it's performance. And performance is how society functions. Appearances are not optional. They are the language through which others understand you. Ignore them, and you risk being misunderstood, dismissed, or forgotten. Machiavelli told rulers, "It is not necessary to be virtuous, but it is necessary to appear virtuous." What did he mean? That people will not scrutinize your heart, they will judge your image. If you seem just, brave, generous, or moral, that is enough. This does not mean truth is irrelevant. A rotten foundation will eventually collapse, but appearances buy you time, trust, and influence, often long enough to achieve your goals. Why are appearances so powerful? Because human beings are cognitive misers, we take mental shortcuts. Instead of analyzing reality in detail, we rely on signals, symbols, and stories. A person in a white coat seems authoritative. A confident voice sounds trustworthy. A polished brand feels reliable. These shortcuts save mental energy, but they also make us vulnerable to manipulation. We don't see the world as it is. We see it as it looks. His empire was built not just on military skill but on appearances. He styled himself as a godlike figure, staging grand entrances and wearing symbolic armor. His image held his empire together even when his actual control was fragile. After escaping exile on Elba, he confronted the French army sent to capture him. Instead of fighting, he opened his coat, exposing his chest, and declared, "Here I am. Kill your emperor if you wish." The appearance of courage turned his enemies back into loyal soldiers. In televised debates, research shows that most viewers don't remember the detailed arguments, but they remember body language, tone, and confidence. The appearance of leadership outweighs the content of words. A job interview is less about your raw skills and more about how you present them. In relationships, confidence and charm often matter more than objective compatibility. On social media, perception of success frequently matters more than actual success. In all these cases, appearances shape outcomes more than hidden reality. Of course, appearances can deceive. History is littered with leaders, cults, and corporations that projected virtue while hiding corruption. The danger is when appearances diverge too far from reality. Eventually, the mask slips. When that happens, disillusionment is violent. Think of scandals in politics or business. The appearance of morality collapses overnight, and the backlash is far worse than if the truth had been visible all along. So appearances are powerful, but they must be managed with care. Clarity doesn't mean rejecting appearances. It means mastering them. Curate your image. Ask yourself, how do people see me? What signals am I sending through words, posture, tone, style, and choices? Align image with intent. Your appearance should reinforce your goals. If you want to be trusted, project consistency. If you want to be respected, project confidence. Control the frame. Reality is often ambiguous. Whoever frames the story controls the perception. In debates, in business, even in personal disputes, define how the situation is seen, and others will follow that frame. Balance appearance and substance. Appearances without substance are brittle. Substance without appearances is invisible. The strongest strategy is to build both, and let appearances magnify your truth. Even philosophy recognizes the role of appearances. Plato's allegory of the cave describes people mistaking shadows for reality. Buddhism speaks of Maya, the world of illusion. Clarity is not about rejecting appearances, but about seeing them as they are, shadows that shape behavior. When you see the shadow, you can trace it back to the fire. Next time you meet someone powerful, don't just ask, what are they saying? Ask, what image are they crafting? What role are they playing? Next time you present yourself, whether in a meeting, a date, or online, don't just ask, what do I want? Ask, how am I being perceived? This doesn't mean becoming fake, it means becoming intentional. If appearances are the stage, then emotions are the electricity running through the performance. Without emotion, appearances fall flat. Without emotion, influence collapses. The great strategists, leaders, and thinkers throughout history have all understood this. Human beings are not primarily rational creatures. We are emotional first, rational second. We like to think we make decisions based on reason. We imagine ourselves weighing evidence, thinking logically, acting in our best interest. But countless studies in psychology and neuroscience have revealed the truth. Reason is the servant of emotion, not the other way around. Antonio Damasio, a neuroscientist, studied patients with brain damage that prevented them from feeling emotions. The result? These people could still think logically, but they couldn't make decisions. They would spend hours debating what shirt to wear, what food to eat, Because choice requires feeling. Emotion provides the weight that tips the scale. So when someone claims they are purely rational, what they really mean is that they are blind to how emotions are guiding their reasoning. Consider the most powerful human actions: falling in love, starting a revolution, sacrificing one's life for a cause, building empires, fighting wars, creating works of art. None of these are purely rational. They are driven by deep emotional forces: love, anger, pride, hope, fear, or despair. Emotions are not weaknesses. They are engines. The problem is not that emotions exist. The problem is when they control us rather than us controlling them. The Stoics spoke of mastering emotions not by suppressing them, but by understanding them. Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor-philosopher, reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." To them, emotions were not to be denied, but to be tamed, like a wild horse that, if guided, can carry you far, but if left unchecked, can throw you into chaos. If you do not master your emotions, someone else will. Politicians stir fear of enemies or outsiders to rally loyalty. Marketers sell not products, but feelings, status, desire, belonging. Manipulators in personal life provoke guilt, shame, or pity to control behavior. Look closely and you'll see. When people influence you, they almost never appeal to logic first. They go for the emotional core. Logic comes later to justify the feeling. Let's break down the emotional toolkit. Psychologists often reduce emotions to a handful of core categories. Fear, the oldest and most primal emotion. Fear mobilizes survival. Leaders and rulers often exploit fear to gain obedience. If you don't follow me, chaos will consume you. Anger, the spark of rebellion and the fuel of justice. Anger unites people against a common enemy, but it can also blind judgment and destroy from within. Desire, the longing for what we don't have. Desire drives economies, relationships, and ambition. But unchecked, it can trap us in endless dissatisfaction. Love, not just romantic love, but affection, loyalty, connection. Entire civilizations hold together through shared bonds of loyalty and belonging. Love inspires sacrifice beyond reason. Hope, perhaps the most powerful. Hope lifts people through suffering, keeps movements alive, sustains life in impossible conditions. A leader who gives hope commands devotion. Pride, the hunger for recognition. Pride fuels achievement, heroism, and creation, but also arrogance and downfall. Every act of persuasion, every appearance, every mask ultimately taps into one or more of these emotions. Julius Caesar. When he returned to Rome after victories, he staged elaborate triumphs. These weren't military necessities, they were emotional theater. The cheers of the crowd cemented loyalty far more than any law could. Martin Luther King Jr. His "I Have a Dream" speech didn't overwhelm with statistics. It inspired with imagery, rhythm, and emotional resonance. Hope, not logic, fueled the civil rights movement. Adolf Hitler, a dark example but an undeniable one. His rise was not powered by reasoned argument but by mastery of fear, anger, and pride. He knew how to stir crowds into frenzy through emotional spectacle. But let's bring this closer. How often have you made a decision in anger that you later regretted? How often have you bought something you didn't need because of excitement or envy? How often have you stayed in a toxic relationship because of guilt, fear, or misplaced love? Your enemy is not emotion itself, but emotional blindness, awareness. Notice what emotion is driving you in the moment. Ask, what am I feeling right now? Fear, pride, anger. Naming the emotion loosens its grip. Pause before action. Emotions demand immediacy, but if you pause, even for a few breaths, you gain space. That space is power. Reframe the story. Emotions are triggered by interpretations. Change the interpretation, and you change the feeling. What feels like an insult may actually be insecurity in the other person. What feels like rejection may be redirection. Channel don't suppress anger can fuel creativity. Fear can sharpen awareness. Desire can drive achievement. Don't crush emotions, harness them. Protect against manipulation. When you feel an emotion strongly, ask, who benefits from me feeling this way? If someone else is trying to provoke fear, guilt, or desire, see it, and the spell weakens. The ultimate freedom is emotional sovereignty, the ability to feel deeply but not be ruled blindly. Imagine facing insult without anger. Imagine facing loss without despair. Imagine feeling love fully, but without clinging to illusion. This is not coldness, it is clarity. It is the ability to use emotions as tools rather than being used by them. So far we have unmasked illusions, uncovered self-interest, understood deception, mastered appearances, and now emotions. But clarity demands we go even further. Because behind appearances, behind emotions, lies another hidden force, the role of chance, fortune, and timing in human life. And that takes us to Section 6, Fortune and Uncertainty, the uncontrollable forces of existence. For all our illusions, self-interest, appearances, and emotions, there remains one force that humbles us all. Fortune. Call it luck, chance, fate, destiny. Whatever name you choose, it is the undeniable truth that vast parts of life lie outside our control. The Greeks spoke of Tyche, the goddess of chance, who could lift a person to glory one day and crush them the next. Even great heroes bowed to her unpredictability. The Stoics reminded themselves daily that fate was beyond their control. Epictetus taught, "Some things are up to us and some things are not." The key to peace was focusing only on the first. The Buddhists taught impermanence. Everything changes. Nothing is guaranteed. Clinging to certainty is the root of suffering. In every tradition, the same truth echoes: fortune rules more than we'd like to admit. Modern life deceives us into thinking we're in control. We have schedules, insurance, technology, medicine. Yet how quickly do these illusions shatter? A sudden illness, an unexpected accident, a market crash that erases savings overnight, a war, a pandemic, a disaster. In one instant, fortune reminds us, your control was always partial, fragile. Consider two people of equal talent. One is born in an era of peace where their gifts are rewarded. The other is born in a time of war where their potential is buried under chaos. History often remembers the great individuals, but behind every name is also the hand of fortune. The right place, the right time, the right circumstances. Would Alexander have conquered if he had been born a century later? Would Shakespeare be remembered if he lived in a village with no stage? Fortune is not everything, but it is always there. Bill Gates, brilliant, yes, but also born at the perfect time, with rare access to a computer in the 1970s, when almost no one had that opportunity. His talent met fortune. Napoleon, a Corsican minor noble, an unlikely origin. But the French Revolution created chaos, tearing down old hierarchies. In that chaos, his ambition found an opening. Survivors of disasters. Many stories of survival come down not to strength or intelligence, but to small random twists, missing a train that later crashes or standing 2 feet away from danger. When fortune favors us, we tend to credit ourselves. I succeeded because I was smart, disciplined, hardworking. But when fortune turns against us, we curse the world. The truth is, both views are partial. Effort matters. Without it, fortune alone accomplishes little. But fortune matters too. Without it, effort may go unnoticed, unrewarded, or destroyed. Clarity is the balance, knowing what is you and what is chance. So what do we do, knowing fortune rules so much of life? Prepare relentlessly. Fortune favors the prepared. You cannot control the flood, but you can build strong foundations. Skill, discipline, knowledge. These increase your odds when fortune opens a door. Accept what cannot be controlled. Serenity comes from releasing the illusion of total control. You cannot dictate others' actions, global events, or sudden misfortune. Accepting this truth reduces bitterness. Adapt quickly. Fortune shifts constantly. The ability to pivot, to change plans, reinvent yourself, seize opportunity, is often more important than rigid strength. Practice humility. Success is never yours alone. Remember the invisible hand of timing, circumstance, and chance. This humility prevents arrogance and deepens gratitude. The samurai embraced the idea of death before battle. By accepting the worst outcome, they freed themselves from fear. Fortune could bring death, but they had already made peace with it. The Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining all possible misfortunes so they would not be shocked when they arrived. By rehearsing loss, they built resilience. The modern world avoids this. We hide from uncertainty, cling to promises of security. But true strength comes from embracing the uncontrollable. Imagine a chess game. Your skill determines how well you play. But the opening moves, the luck of who your opponent is, the timing of their mistakes, all are beyond you. Life is this dance between fortune and effort. To deny fortune is arrogance. To deny effort is defeat. Clarity lies in the middle. Act as if everything depends on you, while knowing much does not. Medieval thinkers spoke of the wheel of fortune. Picture a great wheel turning endlessly. At one moment you are rising to power. At the next you are falling into ruin. Kings, emperors, and peasants alike are bound to the wheel. No one escapes. The wise person, therefore, does not cling too tightly to their position. They accept the turning. Think of your own life. How many of the most important events were chosen, and how many were accidents of timing? The friends you met, the family you were born into, the opportunities that came or never came. Clarity is seeing these clearly, without bitterness, without arrogance. So far, we've seen that clarity demands honesty about illusions, self-interest, deception, appearances, emotions, and fortune. But there is another layer still: power itself. How it moves, how it hides, how it shapes everything beneath the surface. To see clearly, you must not only understand fortune, but also the mechanics of power. When you peel back illusion, self-interest, appearances, emotions, and fortune, you begin to see the skeleton that holds society together. Power. It is the invisible architecture of human life. Power shapes nations, relationships, cultures, even the way you think about yourself. Yet most people are blind to it, precisely because power prefers to hide in the shadows. At its core, power is the ability to shape reality for others through force, persuasion, reward, or belief. It is not always violence or wealth. Sometimes it is subtle. The teacher who defines what counts as knowledge. The employer who sets the value of your labor. The friend who makes you doubt yourself or lifts you up with one sentence. Power is not just in governments or armies. It is woven into everyday interactions. We often imagine power as obvious: kings, presidents, billionaires. But the most effective power is rarely visible. Michel Foucault, a modern philosopher, argued that true power works not by commanding directly, but by shaping the very framework of thought. If you can define what people believe is normal, you don't need to force them. They police themselves. For example, if society convinces you that success means wealth, you will willingly work, consume, and compete without questioning the definition itself. If culture convinces you that beauty looks a certain way, people will discipline their bodies to match that image. That's power, not through chains, but through invisible norms. Power is not just global, it's deeply personal. In a relationship, who decides what is discussed and what is ignored? Who apologizes more often? Who feels more dependent? Often the balance of power is subtle. A partner may never raise their voice, yet still control the emotional climate. A friend may never threaten you, yet still manipulate your decisions. Clarity requires noticing these currents of influence, not just in politics, but in your daily life. Power rarely shows itself naked. It wears masks, authority, power disguised as legitimacy. I have the right to command you. Expertise, power disguised as knowledge. I know better than you. Morality, power disguised as virtue. I'm on the side of good, so you must follow. Love, power disguised as care. I'm only doing this for your own good. Masks make power acceptable, even invisible. And the more invisible it is, the stronger it becomes. Unlike fortune, which is random, power is structured. It exists in networks. Governments, corporations, families, schools, religions. Each person within a network holds a position, and that position determines how much they can influence others. Even if you are not powerful in the grand sense, you still hold power within your own circles. This is why clarity matters. Understanding not just who has power, but how it flows through the system. Paradoxically, power is both strong and fragile. Strong, because once established, it shapes minds and behaviors almost effortlessly. Fragile because if its mask slips, if its legitimacy collapses, people can withdraw obedience overnight. Consider revolutions. The Soviet Union seemed immovable until it crumbled rapidly. Dictators appear eternal until they fall within days. Power lasts only as long as belief sustains it. The Roman Empire. Rome ruled not only with legions but with law, symbols, and culture. The eagle standard, Roman roads, Roman citizenship, these were tools of power as much as swords. The Catholic Church. For centuries it held enormous sway, not through armies alone, but through control of belief. By defining salvation, it defined obedience. Modern corporations. Today, tech giants shape your life not by force, but by algorithms. They control what you see, what you think about, how you spend your time. That is power more intimate than any king ever had. Most people see themselves as powerless, but this too is an illusion. You hold power in how you influence the moods, choices, and beliefs of those around you. You hold power in how you spend your attention, your time, your money. Power is not only top-down, it is distributed. Every choice you make strengthens or weakens the structures around you. Power is seductive. Once tasted, it rarely releases its grip. History is filled with people who began with noble intentions, only to be corrupted by the desire to hold and expand influence. This is why clarity about power is not only intellectual, it is ethical. You must ask yourself, when I hold power, how will I use it? And when others hold power over me, will I recognize it? Here lies the paradox. Those who ignore power are most controlled by it. Those who see it clearly are free to resist, navigate, or even wield it responsibly. Clarity is not cynicism, it is awareness. It is recognizing that beneath every relationship, every institution, every interaction, power hums quietly. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. But even power has limits. Power governs, but it does not explain meaning. You can master illusions, navigate self-interest, control appearances, manage emotions, respect fortune, and understand power, yet still feel lost. Which brings us to the next layer of clarity. Section 8, the search for meaning in an indifferent universe. Once we strip away illusions, self-interest, appearances, emotions, fortune, and power, we arrive at a stark reality. The universe does not care. Stars burn and collapse, indifferent to human ambition. Mountains rise and erode, oceans churn and recede, untouched by your hopes, your fears, or your triumphs. The cosmos neither rewards virtue nor punishes vice. It simply is. For many, this realization is terrifying. For others, it is liberating. To confront the indifference of the universe is to face one of the deepest philosophical truths. Meaning is not given, it must be created. Humans have long sought a cosmic reason, God's destiny, fate, divine plans. Religion, philosophy, and myth often offer comforting narratives. You are here for a reason. Your life is part of a grand design. But these narratives are frameworks. Powerful, yes, but not evidence. The universe itself remains silent. Nietzsche, the German philosopher, called this the death of God. Not as an act of atheism alone, but as a recognition that the external source of meaning is no longer credible. Without that source, we confront the void. The question then becomes, will you crumble in the void, or will you build your own meaning? At first glance, meaninglessness feels heavy, oppressive, and terrifying. But it is also the ultimate freedom. If meaning is not handed down, then every choice you make carries weight. You are the architect of your life, the sculptor of your purpose. This freedom, however, comes with responsibility. Without a guiding principle, without deliberate creation, one can drift into despair, apathy, or chaos. Humans are storytelling creatures. We instinctively seek to weave events into narratives, to find patterns, to create significance. Even in a world without intrinsic meaning, stories can give life coherence. A family history we cherish, a personal goal we pursue relentlessly, a moral principle we live by. Stories, whether shared or private, act as scaffolding. They give the chaos shape, the random universe a sense of rhythm. One of the most potent sources of meaning is action. Creativity, to build, write, paint, or compose, is to leave a mark that did not exist before. Connection, to love, teach, help, or empathize, creates significance beyond oneself. Challenge, to struggle, endure, or overcome difficulty, gives life a sense of purpose, regardless of the outcome. Existentialist thinkers like Sartre emphasize this. Meaning is not discovered, it is acted into being. Paradoxically, suffering often sharpens meaning. Pain and adversity highlight the fragility and intensity of life. They force confrontation with what truly matters. While suffering cannot be denied, it can be transformed into a source of insight. The death of a loved one can teach the depth of human attachment. Personal failure can illuminate humility and resilience. Confronting injustice can inspire courage and purpose. In other words, the indifferent universe does not prevent meaning. It challenges us to create it under pressure. Meaning is often tied to temporality, the knowledge that one's actions ripple through time. A scientist discovers a principle that benefits generations. A teacher instills curiosity in students who shape the future. An artist composes a work that resonates decades later. Even if the universe is indifferent, the continuity of influence, what you leave behind, offers a bridge to enduring significance. Freedom without responsibility is a curse. Freedom embraced with responsibility is liberation. You are responsible for your actions and their consequences, your engagement with others, the integrity of the narratives you choose to live by. This is why existentialist philosophers emphasize courage, authenticity, and self-examination. To live deliberately is to acknowledge the void and still act with meaning. Many fall into traps of false significance, fame without substance, wealth without purpose, ideology without reflection. These forms of meaning feel powerful but are fragile. When the illusion collapses, the individual may face profound existential despair. True meaning is self-directed, resilient, and aligned with one's deepest values. Facing the indifferent universe is not just a trial, it is an opportunity. Imagine life as a blank canvas. The absence of preordained meaning allows for infinite creation. You can paint tragedy and triumph, joy and sorrow, love and wisdom. Every day offers new strokes. Existential freedom is a gift disguised as a challenge. To embrace it is to accept that life matters because you choose for it to matter. Here is the essential paradox. The universe is indifferent, yet life can be infinitely significant. The bridge between these extremes is conscious creation. Meaning is not discovered, imposed, or inherited. It is willed into existence. Responsibility and freedom coexist. Choosing your path is both liberation and burden. Life is fragile, transient, and fleeting, yet every action resonates in ways that can echo beyond oneself. This awareness is clarity. This is understanding life in its rawest, most profound form. Now, after peeling away illusion, self-interest, appearances, emotions, fortune, and power, And after confronting the indifferent universe and creating meaning, we arrive at the ultimate question. How does one live wisely? Philosophers across time have wrestled with this. From Socrates to Confucius, from Marcus Aurelius to modern existentialists, wisdom has always been about integration, taking insights and turning them into actionable life. Wisdom begins with self-knowledge, but not in isolation. True understanding requires seeing yourself in the context of the world. You are a finite being, but you participate in a vast, interconnected cosmos. Your actions ripple outward, influencing people, environments, and future generations. Your thoughts and choices, though fleeting, form patterns that define your character. Self-knowledge is more than introspection. It is relational awareness, understanding your place, your influence, and your responsibility in a wider tapestry. Philosophy is useless if it remains abstract. Wisdom demands action. Knowledge without action becomes sterile speculation. Action without knowledge becomes reckless impulse. The wise person cultivates both, understanding the world deeply and acting deliberately within it. Aristotle called this concept phronesis, practical wisdom. It is the art of applying insight to real-life circumstances. Virtue is not moralistic dogma. It is a guiding compass for action. Key virtues for wise living include courage, facing uncertainty and adversity without avoidance; temperance, moderating desire, impulse, and excess; justice, recognizing fairness and responsibility toward others; prudence, discernment in choices, balancing short-term and long-term effects; compassion, engaging with others empathetically without being enslaved by sentiment. Virtue is the alignment between values, action, and the realities of the world. It is the bridge between inner meaning and outer behavior. Daily reflection is a hallmark of the wise life. This is not mere daydreaming. It is active contemplation. Assess your choices, examine your intentions, consider the consequences of your actions, reconcile mistakes without self-reproach, then adjust your course. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, advised daily reflection as a way to maintain moral and practical clarity. In essence, wisdom grows not only in action, but in deliberate pause. Extreme indulgence or extreme denial both distort perception. Wisdom lies in the middle path. Enjoy pleasures without attachment. Avoid unnecessary suffering without overprotection. Seek knowledge without arrogance, action without rashness. Moderation does not mean passivity. It means measured engagement, a careful alignment of desire, effort, and reality. Even in philosophical solitude, wisdom recognizes the importance of connection. Relationships are mirrors for self-awareness. Ethical living is impossible without social engagement. Legacy is formed in collaboration with others through mentorship, teaching, art, and care. Isolation may deepen insight, but engagement translates it into meaningful existence. As we conclude this journey, consider this. The universe may be indifferent, life may be transient, and meaning may be self-created. But within this reality lies infinite potential. Your life, your choices, your attention, your compassion, your courage, they are the threads from which significance is woven. Wisdom is not a destination. It is the practice of living fully, clearly, and courageously, every single day. In the end, the art of living wisely is the art of becoming fully human, aware, deliberate, and profoundly alive.